Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to this week's episode of Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell and I'm joined by my co-host as always, Mark Davison. Mark, how's it going?
Yeah, good, Matty. How's it going, mate, yourself? It's a bit wet down here, though. How about
Mate,
you?
it's crazy. We've just had, for all listeners out there, you're live joining us, and we know we've already got like Greg Wakefield in the chat. We've got Javier Mori, Double HH, Snowman, a couple of regulars there. So AJ, welcome to all you people out there. We've had just days of rain. I don't know what it converts into the meterage, Mark, but I think it's like, what is it, like 25 inches or something we've had over the last couple of days?
No idea.
Crazy.
I just know it hasn't stopped raining since Thursday here in New South Wales. So it's kind of crazy. It really is. A lot of guys, there are flash floodings everywhere. So, that's not real good for us here, but it could stop tomorrow and then be, a dry spell. So definitely crazy, but we've had a crazy Steelers week as well.
It's been a very crazy Steelers week.
We've lost a lot of players. I think that we're awesome Steelers. My mate Mike Hilton, he's going to the Bengals, so maybe I should be a Bengals supporter now. I don't know, but that's so hard to say.
Now, look, I'm bringing it straight up. We got a super chat here from Double HH just to really crack into the show. So, Double HH, Thank you very much for this, mate. This is huge. This is 20 American dollars. So these are real dollars, chaps. He says. Mark, I don't know how many Americans would be surprised to know that the Australian dollar was parity and above the US dollar, in the last decade or so. But we'll, all the same, we so appreciate this Double HH. We appreciate everyone in the live chat. It really helps make the show. As I said last week a couple of times, Mark and I could sit at home, have a chat on the phone, or, go to the pub, which we want to do anyway. But we love talking Steelers with you all. It's about that Steelers family. And particularly in what are trying times around the world as well. It's good to be able to just hang out with a bunch of mates, on all different sides of the world and all different time zones, and just talk Steelers. So don't worry, Double HH, we'll keep feeding that beast. But in the spirit of talking Steelers and all things on all different parts of the world, we've got a special guest for today's show. He's actually been on the show before, and that is Jeffrey Benedict. Jeffrey Benedict, welcome to Steelers Touchdown Under, second appearance.
Glad to be here, guys. Glad to be on with Mark too.
Yeah. 100%. This is the first time I've actually talked to Jeff. So, here we are. It's my 9 a.m. and it's your 6 p.m. And here we are, talking Steelers football. So it's bloody amazing.
Now, look at that Aussie flavor. Jeffrey, I got a quick question to kick it off with and get you teased into the show. And don't worry, Steel fans, we will get into the big news of the last couple of days. Your Twitter handle is Fantaskippy. Now, there's a big show that went popular globally. I think it was almost more popular than like what it was here, although probably more for Mark and my parents. But was Skippy the kangaroo? Is there any ties to Fantaskippy, to Skippy the kangaroo?
It's a couple steps. I named when we got cats, I got to name a cat, and I named him Skippy. He turned out to be like the coolest cat in the world. I had to change my email name at a point right after he had died, and I did Fantaskippy because all my things involving my name were taken, and I put that in there because he was dead. It was like a dead cat, like Phantom Skippy. So yeah, that's how that name came about, and it has stuck with me ever since. And it does relate back to Skippy the kangaroo.
Right there, a bit of a fail on my end, but that's all right. We'll continue.
It does, but it does connect.
All right. Well, that's okay. You're an honorary Australian. You're top of the board on the accent rankings right now. So welcome to the show.
It definitely has to be up there in the power rankings for Jeff because he did know the TV show Around the Twist, which a lot of Australians or young Australians now don't even know what that is. So Jeff might be moving up there to number one next to Bad, not Bad. Bad's below the bottom. Big Bro Sco with number 2 with his accent with right. And Dave might be just falling down the list a little bit, down to 3 or 4 near Jeff. Haven't heard Michael's yet either. So, and Tony needs to make an appearance too. But Jeff is up there with Round the Twist. He has to be one this week. There you go. There's the updated power rankings.
There we go. There we go. Well, gentlemen, let's crack into it. So, massive couple of days from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Lots of different changes. Obviously, the new league year started midweek. Look, I guess there are a few surprises. Let's kick it off with Alualu there. Mark, what were your feelings when you saw Alualu back to the Jacksonville Jaguars on a deal that, could the Steelers have really put together?
Yeah, a bit shocked, really. Like, he's a big unit up front. We're definitely going to miss his presence there. But you got to feel like on his side, he's going back home. I think he's about 11-year veteran now, is he? In the league, he's going back to the Jaguars where he started. What can you really say? If we can't afford him, we can't pay him the money, or if he's not going to be a Steeler, that's just what it is. I'm waiting for you to ask me about Mike Hilton because I think that's the big one for me. That actually all four blokes. If we're going to go through them all, I don't know. But Vince Williams, Bud, and Mike, those guys now, they won't be in our defense for the next 2-3 years. It's going to be a huge transition and change on that defense. Yeah,
and then that's it. And I'll quickly bring up Big Bro Sco. I'll earn back that top spot. No worries. But we'll lead into some Steelers earning their top spots for this season. But look, Jeffrey, for you look at Alualu, drafted top 10 there by the Jacksonville Jaguars. He goes, I hate to say it, some might see it as going home, whatever. I know that he had one of his most productive years last year. Where does that leave the Steelers? And obviously, we've seen Chris Wormley come back in, which I'm actually open to seeing what he could do with a bit of an expanded role. But yeah, what do Steelers fans need to be thinking about really quickly around that defensive tackle position, nose tackle position?
It's just who's going to take that? I think it really shows by the Steelers that you've got Isaiah Buggs and you've got Carlos Davis and you've got Chris Wormley. Chris Wormley wasn't really an interior guy. He's more of a defensive end. Like when you go to 3-4, he's more of a defensive end. And I liked what he brought when he was there as a defensive tackle. I wasn't very impressed. So for me, this seems to be a vote of confidence for, I think that they think Isaiah Buggs, even Henry Mondeau and Carlos Davis showed enough that they can fight out that spot and win that role. Because really, he didn't get paid that much. Like Alualu he didn't go and get a big paycheck. It's kind of shocking to me that Steelers aren't in that game. Like, come on, it was pretty good.
Well, and that's it. When I went through it as part of the War Room podcast, and I looked at the contract numbers for 2022, which there's roster bonuses, there's workout bonuses in there. Like, they've built this contract expecting that. To me, it almost looks like a 1-year deal for Alualu, and they've spread the guaranteed salary across the two, which the Jags are in a much better cap situation. But yeah, I wonder whether we'll actually see Alualu in the NFL next year, because his contract would suggest potentially not.
Yeah.
The other part of it as well, I think when we look at this particular move, and Mark brought up, obviously Hilton, we've got the news around Nelson potentially going as well, Vince Williams leaving too. This defense is changing quite quickly in terms of what they're doing. And I know it was talked about on a couple of different shows this week. Mark, you've obviously got your fan favorites there in Vinny Vitavici and Mike Hilton going. Vince could be back. Who knows? That they might pick him up on the cheap. I don't know whether, I think other teams could come in for him. I've got one question for you there, Mike Hilton. How are you going to feel when he lines up against the Steelers in that Bengals striped jersey, that really ugly jersey, if it's the one that's been leaked so far that really looks like the Chicago Bears?
Like I've been saying, there's only 31 teams have a chance to win Super Bowl every year, and the Bengals aren't in it. But the Mike Hilton, I think it's just part of the game, part of the business, which is really hard. The reason why I like Hilton the most and why I think he's a great Steeler for his 3 or 4 years there, he started from nowhere. He started as a practice guy, and he was playing really well in the preseason games. And there was one Houston game where he got 3 sacks, and I'm like, this little guy, Mighty Mouse, coming around the corner. It's always good to see those blokes playing football. And now he's going to be wearing a Bengals stripe uniform. And I don't live in the States. You and I, Matty, are so far away. but I hate the Bengals. I can't stand them, and it all come from the idea of who's that bloke? Vontez not perfect. You know that guy? He was like bloody. He made me cringe up and like, why are you allowed to put shoulder pads on when you're a dirty player? And there's another guy in the backfield. Is it Adam Jones?
Jones.
He was terrible too. So I understand the Bengals are a different franchise and they're trying to get Mr. Burrows going, and Hilton might be there, but I'll root for the guy because I want Hilton to succeed and make money and have a great life, family, and all that. But he chose the Bengals, like out of all of them. Like,
I think it's more
man.
they chose him though with that contract. I still stick to my piece. I reckon in a season or two he'll be available again. But
he might come back.
But that raises the question as well. He might be available, but will the Steelers have moved on? I know, Jeffrey. It seems as though the Steelers are changing the defense. They're changing the defense here. And what could we expect out of that in 2021?
Well, it's going to be a big change. Hilton and Vince Williams. If you go back to last season, first 5 games before Devin Bush went down, they were first and third in tackles for a loss and sacks. Like, they were the guys making plays. It was Mike Hilton and Vince Williams. And when you look at the roster, I mean, where do they rank on that roster in overall talent in 2020? Like, you're not putting them ahead of Minka or TJ or Devin Bush or Bud Dupree or Cameron Hayward or Stephon Tuitt, or even Steven Nelson. Like, they're down the list pretty far there, and yet they're the ones collecting the stats. When you look at the defense on film, Devin Bush, Minka Fitzpatrick, they're covering space, they're covering for a lot of things and freeing up Vince Williams and Mike Hilton to blitz and to make those plays. And we're moving on from both of them. That tells me that I think we're going to see a defense built more to cater to a Devin Bush and to Minka Fitzpatrick making those plays, and puts people in a position to, fill out the jobs more. I don't want to say like do your job, because like they did their job and they did it well. But I think you'll see the Steelers go for more versatile options, go for, like, especially with Cameron Sutton, he gives you better deep coverage, and Minka Fitzpatrick is great attacking forward. So that really plays into that. Like, he doesn't have to kind of watch Mike Hilton's back as much if that person is then Cameron Sutton.
But, we've talked a little bit there about the cornerbacks. Obviously, the news has come out in terms of Nelson being able to seek a trade. This could be as big as that's going to be a locker room problem to he just feels he needs to be paid more. The Steelers could really use the cap number, and he seems the one that they want to go with, and especially given all the talk we've had this offseason around Hayden being that really crucial centerpiece there of that cornerback room. They've obviously invested there in Cameron Sutton as well. They've got a guy like James Pierre, which they're working through. So in terms of that, with that cornerback room, with Nelson potentially leaving again, how do you feel that will shake things up?
For me, Cameron Sutton, after last season, I was like, okay, Cameron Sutton is like a lesser version of Steven Nelson, but they're the same kind of corner. When he fills in for Steven Nelson, he does fine. Like, he gives up more underneath. Steven Nelson has a little better burst on underneath routes. When Sutton fills in for Joe Hayden, it's awful. The defense like falls apart, but Sutton can play the way Steven Nelson plays. So that actually makes a little more sense to me. I'm more comfortable with Sutton moving outside and taking over Steven Nelson's job than playing where Mike Hilton did. So really, if that holds up, if Steven Nelson leaves, and there's even rumors that the Steelers would cut him if he doesn't find a trade partner. So that to me says the Steelers are looking to move Sutton up. Like they're looking to do that, and Nelson is out either way. So I'm interested to see how it works. I'm more comfortable in a transition where Cameron Sutton moves outside, because it fits him better with what we were doing last season. If he replaces Mike Hilton and he's mostly the nickel back, then it's a very different defense you're talking about.
And this is the question as well, that it's sort of, you wonder about what's going on that we don't necessarily know in terms of timings. Did they go to a restructure for Nelson and he wanted more? Did they not touch that until, because they've got cap, confines, if for want of a better phrase. you're sitting there, you don't know whether you're bringing Sutton back, then Sutton agrees. Then you can go to Nelson and give him his offer. He doesn't like that. So you're like, well, right, we are investing in Sutton, as you said there, Jeffrey, and then you let him go. But if I'm another team and I'm sitting there in this cap scenario that you've got across the league, and every team has a cap challenge, doesn't matter how much gap you've got. If you didn't win the Super Bowl, and even if you did, you're trying to retain players, you've got to, the cap is a challenge this year. Steven Nelson's left it. It's been left a little bit late on Steven Nelson, so I'll be pretty interested to see if that trade market opens up for him or not. Because really, you could just wait for the Steelers to cut him, as you said there, Jeffrey, and then fine. Whereas if we can trade him, do we pick up a couple of picks? Again, they're more valuable than ever as well in the cap situation. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the course of the next 24, 48, 72 hours in terms of Steven Nelson there. Just flicking back over to you, Mark. The other big contract that we had this week was Zach Banner. Zach Banner signed that 2-year deal. I don't know. For me, when I saw it, it wasn't so much of the prove it deal that we necessarily thought. They've locked him up there. Perhaps there was a bigger market even there for Banner than what we've realized. But what are you hoping for from Banner out of Banner in 2021, Mark? Because, we saw him have all that supposed promise coming into 2020, and then he didn't even get through the first game against the Giants.
I just want to see Zach and fellas like him to knock people over. I think we need with this offensive line. Like, I'm not a technical guy. I see what I see, and what I know is what I know. And I want to see Zach Banner knock someone over, move that pile forward. Him, Dotson, and whoever's going to be around us at center, and Finney if he's in there. I don't really care. They need to push that ball, that pile forward in the trenches, and he's got to start. He's a big unit. He's going to start playing football the way that his size is. And yes, he got hurt last year. I say it's good. I say we can if we can start to be upfront and physical like we used to be a couple of years back, then this team's going to improve and the running game will start to improve. And you'll see those plays like Le'Veon Bell. We need to get like a 20-yard run. I swear, like last year, and Jeff might know this, I don't know, but I swear we only had like one 40-yard run. Like I don't know what we really had with the running game. It didn't seem like there were big plays in the running game. Do you remember anything about that, Jeff? Or how
I know the longest run from scrimmage, I believe, was week 2. James Conner at the very end of the game ripped off a 59-yard run, and I believe the only other one close to that was Ray McLeod's reverse or whatever it's called, jet sweep, and that was it. They weren't breaking runs.
Yeah, we need, as a fan standpoint, we just need something in the running game to where we were 32nd last year. It comes down to the running back, but also comes down to the big fellas up front, and they've got to really push that pile or the person in front of them, create the holes, get to the second level, run past them, jump over the safety, do a spin, and then you're in the end zone. That's what we want to see because we've seen that for so many years, going from Franco Harris to Bettis to Willie Parker to Mendenhall a little bit and Bell, and now it's like, well, you're 32nd, and that's not. You can't win. You can't win if you want to play the defense that we want to play. And it is changing a little bit, like Jeff says. If you want to play the defense that we want to play, you have to run the ball consistently and aggressively to a point where, maybe it's 3rd and 7, and then you run and get a first down, and then next minute it's a whole new set of downs. Big Ben come into his own now. We got JuJu maybe in the slot now again too. We got Ray there. You've really got to do something. I feel like I'm preaching, but you got to do something where this O-line is like pushing forward. Get Mike Tomlin on the phone. Like I think he knows. Like signing Banner is good for this offensive line for sure.
And look, we've got Russia in the house, and I'm bringing that up because I don't think we've had Russia in the house on Steelers Touchdown Under. Mark's talked to me about how he found on a Reddit thread that the Germans listen to us. So That's awesome. Welcome there.
Jeff
I do not know
name?
what that says.
In an Australian accent?
I can't pronounce the name. But look, thank you very much for joining. Look, a couple of other people that have been mentioned in the live chat, obviously they've just signed overnight. Miles Killebrew there. And that what that changes that may mean in terms of Dangerfield not coming back. We've apparently signed the Joe Haig from the Buccaneers. And we'll wait to get into that. I guess, Mark, you've sort of alluded to it there a little bit. JuJu Smith-Schuster. Now, that's someone that we've had some very interesting discussion in live chats of, is he mature enough? Is he not? One, the Steelers can't afford him. I think everyone had settled up. I said to you, Mark, I reckon it was 5 or 6 weeks ago now. I didn't think I said you could, if you can get 6 to 10 million now and you got a multi-year, could you make it work? That was at the point where Steelers, weren't necessarily doing, I think they hadn't yet to ever do a voidable contract the way that this has been done, or the way they did, for Ben as well. We've seen that come through this week. The market seemed to open up really late for JuJu. But at the end of the day, he rejected offers, more financially beneficial offers from Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles, who apparently wanted him on a multi-year deal, and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, that is awesome. Like what we do, like what we don't about JuJu. I thought that was awesome. For me, I'm coming out and saying it right now, and I know I was one of the biggest people that was anti-logo dancing. For me, you can dance on every logo of every team that you rejected a deal from. Good luck. And especially if you score a touchdown against Baltimore, carry it back, son. Carry it back. But, Mark, from a fan perspective, and then I'll go your perspective on it too, Jeffrey. From a fan perspective, what does it mean to have JuJu back?
Look, I think it's a good thing. Like now last week and 2 weeks ago, I said I was prepared for JuJu to leave and go to the Jets, the Miami Dolphins, or Chargers, or whatever. On his Twitch stream, he was doing all those kinds of, he was talking about that kind of stuff, which is, it's all part of the game, and I understand that. However, what I really don't buy into is if JuJu is signing the 1 year deal and he comes onto his Instagram and comes into, I'm going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler for life. But what if he just plays the market game and the football game for 1 year? The next year he signs a big 5-year contract with somebody else. I don't think we should all go out and buy JuJu jerseys just yet. I know you have yours, Matt, but look, he's a great player, awesome player. But at the same time, I don't like the roundabout style of conversation where he's bringing up these teams where, oh, should I go here? Or who's better? What's going on? When he's not, he's buying in for 1 year, which I get that. It's great. But this time next year, we might be talking the exact same thing, saying goodbye JuJu. He's going to the Chiefs or he's going to the Pats. So, it's awesome. It's great. But I just think I want to see more stuff on the field. And he has done great things for the Steelers. I'm very sounding a bit negative on this idea. I just get over a little bit about, why do we say he's going to be a Steeler for life when he's only signed that 1 year deal and he's acting like that. But in this year, and we talked to Jeff about it too. We're in that transition year of like, what are we doing right now? Like, is this all for Big Ben and the key players around him? Yeah, that's my two cents on that.
Jeffrey, were you surprised the Steelers were able to bring him back after that market didn't open up? Like when you saw that news, was that a surprise?
That was a big surprise to me. To me, it just doesn't make sense. I'm like, I understand. I love JuJu Smith-Schuster. But like you've got James Washington there. You're committing a bunch of dead cap next year. I understand he's only like $2.5 million, something like that against the cap this year. But it doesn't really make sense why you want to be in on him. And for JuJu, like I don't understand that. Like he turned down the Chiefs where, yeah, he'd be like a number 3 receiver, but you're still putting up yards. Your numbers are going to be a lot better than what they were in Pittsburgh. And people will still, and then people will look and say, whoa, okay, he's still got it. He's a number 2, like that kind of guy. And Baltimore, like that's exactly what Lamar Jackson needs, is a guy who's reliable, can catch a ball thrown his way. JuJu has a huge catch radius. Lamar Jackson's an accurate quarterback, but not like super accurate, like he could use that guy. And JuJu catches downfield. He catches almost 80% of the balls thrown his way. Like that's what Lamar Jackson needs. He would have gone off in Baltimore. They would have used him constantly because he can block. And with that run game, like the Steelers, they had defenses sitting on those slant routes to JuJu. They would put a linebacker just back there to guard those slant routes. You can't do that against Baltimore. Like play action passes from Baltimore, nobody is dropping back. Everybody is playing that run game. To me, if JuJu wanted one season to put up numbers to get a big deal, Pittsburgh was not the best of those 3 options. To my opinion, they're the worst of those 3 options. So I don't get it from that standpoint. Like, why are you coming back? Do you really actually just like Pittsburgh that much?
Well, that's the question, because I sit there with the Ravens even, and I would hate to see him scoring touchdowns for the Ravens, and you sort of wonder, like, football's a business, and obviously this is probably not true, but you got to sit there and you're like, if the Ravens don't have JuJu, does that give us a chance of winning? And we've got to play him twice, like football's a numbers game, right? And if you can increase the likelihood that you're not going to lose those 2 games that are key to getting you into the playoffs, that's a smart investment just to keep them away, in my view, at that sort of number. Especially when you say $2.5 million this year. I think most fans would be happy for the Steelers to pay $2 million a year to, give us an increased chance of beating the Ravens. But I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, and obviously they've got to put some sort of O-line together. Even there, as you say, in terms of putting up big numbers, wouldn't you want to be, having Patrick Mahomes throw to you? And, you've got distractions there, like, and I don't think Samuel Watkins necessarily, I don't think he's coming back or not, but, you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Mecole Hardman, you've got, Travis Kelce, there's lots of ways he could get open when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the ball, you can always expect the ball if you're a receiver down there. So, and then I look at the Eagles as well in terms of where their sort of wide receiver room's at. Obviously there's some questions there at quarterback. I've heard rumors they are going to still go after a quarterback in this year's draft. Might make sense, but you've got running quarterbacks, and again, that feeds into what you were saying there from Lamar Jackson. So there are some of those questionable pieces there. Look, I like the passion. I don't think the market opened up for him perhaps as what he thought it might. And this is why, I just was surprised that it was a 1-year deal for me. I thought this was very interesting in how much is it tied to Big Ben and Canada's offense. But look, for all listeners out there, we'll be cracking right into Matt Canada's offense in part 2 and all the different pieces that affects in terms of Big Ben and beyond. But before we wrap up part 1, I wanted to go into, we do our little sling and the slang segment, our Aussie slang, where we like to teach everyone some of our terminology or fun facts about Australia or what have you. Now, Jeffrey, last time he was on the show about a fortnight ago, he did pretty well and then disclosed to us that he grew up on some Australian TV and a bit of Aussie culture as well. So I wanted to sort of delve into a little bit of that because, we've got, we can go into slang words each week when we've got a guest. I like to sort of get those sort of their feel for Aussies, and we often give our takes on what it's like being an Aussie in America at times and what have you. Jeffrey, what's one of those best experiences or funniest things that you've seen in terms of your history and experience with Aussies, anything Australian culture, pop culture, TV?
Oh man. Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. Okay.
Yeah.
I love most of all, I love reaction videos to like when people see American stereotypes of Australia for the first time. I saw one video that was hilarious. It was a guy walking around the street asking people in Australia if they knew what iocane powder was. And the reactions from that was pretty cool.
Iocane powder?
Iocane powder. It comes from Australia. It's that's actually a movie reference from The Princess Bride. If you've never heard of The Princess Bride, there's a famous line in there about, and he goes on to say that everyone, obviously if you're using iocane powder, we can't trust you because it comes from Australia, and Australia is entirely peopled by criminals. So it's a great, it's a movie you absolutely have to watch. Wow, I expected you guys to know that one. That's fantastic.
No idea.
Yeah, that's a little bit of American homework for you there. Then,
yeah,
go watch The Princess Bride. But that was a funny one for me. I of course always loved I was a Monty Python fan too. So all the Bruce sketches, and anytime someone would post on, like, you'd see a video of someone who looked or acted like that classic stereotype of Australia. That's always cracks me up.
That's it.
Yeah.
So,
Jeff, what is your stereotype of Australia? What do you think? Have you been to Australia before? Or what do you think it looks like, sounds like? I've
never been to Australia. I do know that, my goodness, I know there are like all the different like environments in the world contained within Australia. Mostly beaches. You got like some great beaches there, obviously. That's mostly what I know. And that there's places in Australia that just no one wants to go to, like the back out in the outback. Like you can go far enough out that it's like, no, you really shouldn't be out here.
Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting point. And I'm just going to bring up AHH quickly. Don't insult Kylie Minogue. I wonder if AHH has heard of her sister Danny as well. She's got a sister who was out there and singing. But do you know, fun fact is that, well, it's not really that fun at all. It's probably the wrong terminology. But the US actually tested nuclear bomb prototypes in the middle of Australia in the 60s. So, and there's been a big lawsuit about that. But and there's was
that after they banned it in the United States?
I think so.
Yeah, they went to that's that's great.
And it's
not really great, also, but it's a good story.
It's not a good story.
That's the wrong word to use.
But Australia's got one of the richest uranium depositories in the world, so I don't know if that made the whole thing easier. It's a big debate locally around whether we go nuclear or not, given that the ability to access it so cheap is ridiculous. But you know, and then we've obviously got different defense facilities out there and whatever. But yeah, as you say, the outback is one that just raises all these questions, and I think people sort of expect to land in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane or Perth and go like 2 streets and then they're in the desert, and it's just like, it's not quite like that. And I think that's what surprises a lot of people when they come to Australia. It's like, oh, there's like a lot more people here. There's a lot more of a city here. And I always think it's quite interesting because, people, when you say, oh, you came to Australia, and they'll give you the things. They went to the Harbour Bridge and Sydney Harbour Bridge, and they went to the Sydney Opera House, and they did all these very touristy different types of things. And then you say like, oh, did you get to do X, Y, Z? And they'll be like, no. And, I've got some American friends that come out pretty regularly. And for them, it's interesting when you look at their experience of what they see Australia as being so different from all those landmarks and what have you. And Sydney is, and Mark, you can attest to this as well, it is very much that Opera House and Harbour Bridge, but there's so much more beyond that. It's like any other city. There's quarters with different cultures and backgrounds and nationalities, and the Aussie spin on that. It's pretty diverse.
Can I just say, like, Sydney's okay. It's just a city. It's not the best city in the world. It's all right. Darling Harbour's okay, but it's just a bunch of boats. Like, let's be honest. But if I'm going to be a tourist, and if I would say to all the Americans out there and people from Russia or wherever, if you're coming to Australia, I would suggest starting from like going down south to Melbourne and working your way all the way up top along the coast, on the east coast, going through Sydney, the south coast. Past me, Central Coast, come have a beer with me. Newcastle, going to Byron Bay, Port Macquarie, all the way up to the very top, up to Cairns. That's what I would suggest, is doing the East Coast. You don't have to hit the major landmarks like Sydney. Like Sydney's, I've been there a few times. Like, Matt lives around there. It's all right, but you go out in the country towns, it's so much cooler than seeing a bridge.
Yeah, that's it.
Especially if you're from Pittsburgh. Especially if you're from Pittsburgh, we have enough bridges.
Well, that's the funny thing. You get to when I went to the States last, when I got to go to that Bills game at Heinz Field, two of the funniest parts of that trip were I got into Pittsburgh and people were like, oh, how cool are our bridges? I'm like, yeah, we got a pretty cool bridge too. It's just not painted yellow. And then the second one was we rocked up to San Diego Zoo at the safari park. And mind you, this is actually pretty rare because it's the only platypus that is being housed in a zoo and legally internationally in the world outside of Australia, because very strict rules about platypuses. We got there and they were like, oh, a special exhibit for the next 3 or 4 years is Australian animals. And I'm like, great. And they're like, have you seen our platypus? And no one necessarily, until you open your mouth, knew you were from Australia, but everyone kept going, all the different keepers, oh, you got to go see our platypus exhibit. You got to go see our platypus exhibit. And we're like, that's great. We've seen platypus a billion times.
And we're fascinated. We're all fascinated by them over here because they just look. You're like, what is that animal?
Do you know the fun thing about a platypus, though? They have a sting. They can inject a venom, which is literally numbing. And there's researchers are yet to figure out how to sort of either use that for beneficial properties or to counter that. Like, you just have to put up with the pain. It is an intense, numbing, throbbing pain that just goes on for hours. And most people think this is this cute, fluffy thing with this weird duck bill and whatever that lays eggs. And it's the only mammal to do that.
They taste good.
You've eaten platypus?
Nah, I'm only joking.
I was going to say, we eat a lot of different things, but I haven't had platypus.
If it's from Australia, it has to have something horrible about it, right? It has to have like horrible venom stings or be able to kill you somehow.
Yeah, like those koala drop bears that aren't really a bear.
Oh, look out for those.
Bring out Shield. Shield's a big fan of the show. He says, "Hey mates, that's another $5 in the tip jar. Glad to see Jeffrey on. I'm always doing something when this goes live, but coming in to say hey and keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Shield. You enjoy interacting with me on Twitter, so I appreciate you joining there. But look, that wraps up part one of this week's Steelers Touch Down Under. Join us for part two. We're going to delve into what to expect, or really what to consider when it comes to the unexpected for the Steelers in 2021. How this team is shaping up in terms of 2021 and the Matt Canada offense. We'll talk draft. For part two, everyone here in the live chat, flick us your questions. We want to get you guys involved just as much as everyone else. It's awesome to have Jeffrey on the show. Let's tap into him too. So join us for part two, and we'll get into all draft and free agency. And we're back on Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Mark Davison. We're also joined by the other film guru on BTSC, Jeffrey Benedict. Jeffrey, you're back. You only had a week off. Thank you for joining this week's show. You know, we're just keen to tap your brain into this offense. And it comes from a question that Mark asked me last week, and he kind of stumped me. You know, he tries to stump me each week. But this question,
I stumped myself. I can't even really remember what I said. But I think it was on. Oh, sorry, man, I cut you off. But it was along the lines of, with this draft, and because we're in that transition year, that we have Big Ben, JuJu coming back, and everyone's signing 1-year deals like it's going out of fashion. Are we drafting for Big Ben to succeed this year, Jeff? Or are we drafting for the next guy coming in at the helm at the quarterback position and the future? Or can you have a combination of both? And also a side question as well, because I know that you brought this up in part one. Do we draft players so that the Browns and Ravens don't get that player? What are your thoughts?
I don't think the Steelers do that, especially not. I can't imagine Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert, like, I don't want to say thinking that far ahead, but, you know, kind of overcomplicating things. I think they very much avoid overcomplicating things so that they don't end up outthinking themselves and make like really dumb choices where you think you're being super clever. I don't think they do that. As much as I would hate to see a really great inside linebacker fall to those guys, that's not what the Steelers are taking. They won't take it.
And thoughts on with the Steelers and Big Ben, are they drafting for this year? Because I think we're all in agreement that Big Ben only has 1 year left. No matter what his contract really says, he's got the 1 year win or go home mentality. Do the Pittsburgh Steelers draft for him this year?
I think that'll be told right off the bat with the number one pick if it's a running back. Because if you draft a running back, it's for, 3 years? You know, so you draft a running back to get really good production immediately. I always said that's the most valuable position in the first 2 years is a running back. And after that, they drop off and everything else takes off. So for me, if it's a running back, then it's clearly they're drafting for right now and for this year. And I don't think we'll see that. I don't know. But, you know, the way the Steelers are setting up, that first round pick could be almost anything. And
that leads into a really interesting point. And Dave Schofield, co-editor of the BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, wrote an article this week about the negativity that's among the fan base. And we had some chat that going there in the BTSC Slack channels as well. And I think there were some interesting perspectives. And I sort of saw it in some ways from some of the contributors as there being consideration from guys like yourself, Jeffrey, that, you know, you've had years and years of being a Steeler fan and you've got that acceptance that the team, you know, you're not going to win. We aren't going to win every year, but it's that fight and it's the journey that we get close to, but also taking things in consideration and in putting things in perspective. Bring up this comment from the YouTube side from Evgeny Crosby that says there, or Evgeny Crosby, Ben Roethlisberger has never had a losing season. What makes you think it's going to start now? And you do sort of think about that negativity that sort of existed in this offseason. I think when you think about the cap and the 20 plus free agents or exclusive rights free agents, if you factor them in as well, that raises all these questions in the fans' mind, the drop-off that happened in those final 5 to 6 games of the season. At the end of the day, this was a team that was 11-0. We set a franchise record. Now, you don't have to necessarily win. You don't need to win 11 in a row to make the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl, because the Steelers had never done that before, and we've got 6 Super Bowls. When we're talking off air a little bit, what things should the Steelers come to expect, or what things should fans be open to when it comes to Matt Canada in terms of the offense in 2021, how we work Big Ben in? And I know we started talking about this when I had you on the show, a couple of weeks ago with Dave. But since then, we've seen a number of different moves, whether it is bringing JuJu back in and do they use him right. So I think that's a good place to start, because we're talking, where could this work out from JuJu in terms of getting those numbers? But equally, how are we tooling up, or how is that Matt Canada system coming through to support Big Ben? And as you said before there with the draft, if we get that running back, perhaps that is just tooling up for this year.
Yeah, I think that's the better focus is not so much, is it for Ben? Is it for the future? We've got a transition going on our offense to Matt Canada. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers fill out the roster as we're, trying to move Matt Canada in, but we still have Ben Roethlisberger around. And like last year, we had 3 offenses. We had whatever Randy Fiechner had. We had,
that's not offense.
Yeah, it's offensive offense. We had Matt Canada with his motions and his things, and we had what we eventually turned to, which was Ben Roethlisberger just calling his own plays. And for the little bit of the season that Ben just taking over the offense worked, which ended in week 12. And the Ravens even said like that the team we'd played in week 11 had put some stuff on film. The Ravens put more on film on how to stop Ben's offense. Teams already knew how to stop Randy Fiechner's offense. And because of that, there were tells for Matt Canada's stuff. Ben Roethlisberger's offense, when it was running, was when JuJu Smith-Schuster played the best. Was when they were doing what Ben Roethlisberger was calling. So Matt Canada is going to have to somehow integrate Ben Roethlisberger's, let's go 5 wide, everyone stand there, let me see what's going on, and then call out route changes to people, and then go, and I'll find the person that I changed their route to beat the defense. He's going to have to figure out how to integrate that with his stuff. And that's going to be the real challenge. And a lot of that's going to come through in personnel, especially I'm really interested to see what we do at tight end. Because Matt Canada uses tight ends, fullbacks, running backs, and sometimes wide receivers as those H-backs and wing backs. And those are people that go in motion in his offense, and they motion all around. They motion different positions, not just one side to the other. They motion all over the place. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we fill that part of the offense. And it'll really, I think it's really going to be kind of striking a balance between what do we do for Ben this year and how do we transition to what we're going to be doing in the future with Matt Canada.
Well, and let's pick up on this tight end one. Now, I did a mock draft last night from one of the Draft Network websites. And believe it or not, when it got to Steelers pick, Kyle Pitts hadn't been picked up yet, right? Now, you can't right now, there's a rumor that he's the best athlete. He's actually the best overall pick in this year's draft at his position. It's just obviously we all know that tight end is not probably ever going to be picked, in with that number 1 pick, because what he could even do if he was just a wide receiver, is incredible. Obviously, he's not going to be on the board when the Steelers pick. If he was, it would be ludicrous not to take him if you do truly believe in best player available. But the tight end room is a really interesting one because, as you said there, Jeffrey, how the Canada works in those wing backs and wide receivers and what have you. We look at the personnel that we've got here, and this feeds into this expecting the unexpected. We talked last time a little bit about Jalen Samuels and could this open up the role for him? Yes, you bring back JuJu, but when JuJu can block, you also have a situation where you've got Claypool who, when he was coming through, people like, is a team going to put him there as a tight end or is he going to be a wide receiver? 6'4", 235 pounds plus. Even though it was an average preseason in terms of what they could do, he wouldn't have had that much of a role if the Steelers didn't have confidence that he was developing as a blocker there. You go out and get a couple of decent tight ends, and in this draft or through free agency, obviously Jesse James is one that everyone is considering. Do the Steelers bring him back? This is one of those key pieces that could really unlock this offense in 2021. And I know, Mark, we've talked about it a few times there about not having that reliable tight end since Heath. What would you like to see out of the tight end room, particularly from that fan perspective in this season?
Yeah, someone who can really stretch the field and maybe go down the middle, a bit like Heath did, and a bit of a, scapegoat kind of style. But I think it's the same kind of mentality with the O-line and how to fix his offense. You've got to have a bit of a brute force. You need the guy who can block, who can, set up lanes for the running back. That's my mentality. If I was a coach this year or offensive coordinator like Matt Canada, I think you've got to use them to a bit of trickeration. At the same time, you still need to open up those holes where you can use the scat back, the fullback, or the running back to run those lanes. So then you can, we don't. Big Ben doesn't really use the play action. That's why I find this year so funny, right? So if you had more of a play action style, you could use those tight ends more, but Big Ben doesn't do it. So what's this year? If I put this question out there, if we see the exact same thing as last year, where he gets all those 500 yards, 5 wide sets, and he's doing all these things gravy, right? But then nothing happens out of it. That's my biggest, my negative worry. Would you guys agree with that? Like, if we do the exact same thing, and then what do we have? 12-4, and then we don't go anywhere?
I think that's all. I think that's, for me personally, that's always the concern. But the way they're tooling up, and this is the thing that comes down as a fan, right? Even if you think that they're going to do nothing, there's a, Steelers freak, and I'm not trying to pick here, but it says, unless Ben changes the style of play, we don't expect much. Now, we have this all the time. And, we make those similar comments. But at the end of the day, we're still going to be watching. I mean, if you're here right now listening to this live or even on the audio side, on the podcast side, you're a Steelers diehard. You're a Steelers fan through and through. So you might hate every single move they make. You may think they need to completely change their defensive and offensive philosophy. But you're still watching. You're still supporting, right? So I think there's this piece where we always want them to win. You don't watch a team expecting them to lose. We're not that sort of a franchise. We're not that type of a fan base. And, you saw that with Miami, the tank for Tua stuff. They didn't end up with that final pick. That's not the way that Brian Flores wanted to go down there. You look at the Jets. I mean, they sucked so bad they couldn't even get that first pick, and then the fan base went nuts. I think that we want to be in that position. So, but I agree with you, Mark. And that's what I think is interesting about how everything seems built around 2021. If it doesn't work, 2022 is a whole different question, because suddenly, there's a lot of cap that becomes available. Like, it'll be plus 100 million on current numbers. Probably don't have Big Ben. Do the calls for Tomlin to go get wider? I mean, Jeffrey, what are your thoughts about how are you feeling in terms of, is it just good enough to get this 12-4? Do we have a real shot? If we don't, what does 2022 look like where we sit right now?
Yeah, 2022 definitely gives you a chance to say, all right, this team had its run. Let's move on and start over. Let's start a different group. You can let a bunch of contracts are coming up, and you have a bunch of money available. Obviously, if you plan on keeping TJ Watt, that's going to eat a lot of it. But there's a big opportunity there just to say, okay, Ben Roethlisberger's gone. We're gonna bring in different players. We're gonna start different people. You can do that. For this season, I'm gonna backtrack into what you guys were talking about with Matt Canada, and especially the run game. What to expect from Ben Roethlisberger in this run game is, if you look at Matt Canada, he has talked extensively in his past about the pistol and how you can run anything out of pistol that you can run out of I formation, right? And if you look at the end of last season, the Steelers started running pistol, including running some play action. The RPOs, I did a film room on how bad the RPOs were in the first third of the season. They went away and then came back around week 12, week 13. They started running more RPOs, and the RPOs weren't bad. They were different, and they weren't as predictable as the ones they were running earlier in the season. And Ben Roethlisberger was doing better with them. They're not a true RPO because he was still making the read pre-snap. But at that point, it's play action. Like if you're doing an RPO and you're sitting there faking the handoff and then you're throwing something, that's play action. The other team still has to react to that run possibility, even if you're not really going to run it. So there's that comes in. We saw them using more of the pistol, and I expect that to increase. I expect more of the motion inside, more of that inside motion moving people around. It works. When you get tight ends and fullbacks and everything and running back switching positions, it messes up. It really stresses the defense's communication, and there's not a lot of teams that have really great communication out there. So you're gonna see that, and I think that's the key. I know a lot of people are expecting a big tackle to be signed in the first round. The Steelers have 3 tackles now. I mean, they just brought in a backup who's a swing tackle and was the Kansas City Chiefs. He came on as their 6th offensive lineman a lot. He's a tackle. Like, that's your swing tackle. You've got a Corafor. You've got Banner. You've got this guy. The Steelers don't need a tackle. At least in their book for the numbers, they don't need to draft a tackle now.
Well, and who's to say that they don't get Villanueva on a cheap deal with voidable years as well?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems the route we're going down, right?
They can go anywhere, and they've set that up. They can go anywhere with this. It's going to be very interesting to see. But I think the one thing that really, really gets me excited about next season is JuJu Smith-Schuster coming back makes sense if he really believes Matt Canada's offense is going to be significantly different than Randy Fichtner and is going to be functional enough that he can really put up numbers in it. Because Randy Fichtner's offense just let teams take JuJu out of the equation. They were like, oh, you're going to take what we give you. We're not going to give you JuJu. And then, now you're working on lobs down the field to Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson dropping things or relying on him with yards after catch. So I think that gives me hope is that JuJu Smith-Schuster buying in, not just to Ben's last year, but also this offense to set him up for his next contract.
And incredible. Before I get to the Snowman Super Chat here, firstly, I'm going to ask this question of Jeffrey and then Mark. I want you to give me what your reaction would be to this. Let's say it does work. And we've Mark and I have loosely danced around this scenario a couple of times. Let's say it does work in 2021 and the Steelers look, it seems to work on offense much better. It sustains through the season. I'm not saying it's 16-0, but it is 13-3 or 12-4, but they look good. They go, they lose in the divisional round or they lose in the AFC Championship. Ben feels reinvigorated. He's a couple of years now removed from the injury. Do you see him coming back in 2022?
I definitely can. If things go well, why walk away? I mean, how many years did Peyton Manning play after his neck injury? That was supposed to ruin his career. He played for years after that. Ben is not done. If he's still playing at the level he was this year and the offense is better designed and the scheme lets him be better, I don't see why he wouldn't be back.
And particularly if they do go after and get, whether it's round 1 or round 2, they go get a running back that can do something and take the pressure off, and he starts being open to that. Mark, what about you? How would you feel if all this starts working and we that we just suddenly there's this more, even better confidence in what Big Ben can do? How would you feel about 2022?
I'm a massive Big Ben fan. I've got this jersey behind me, and I've got a great story about that, but that's for the future. I didn't ever actually buy the jersey, but yeah, we'll leave that for another show. Actually, I almost kind of stole it off a bloke, but here we go. Okay, so Big Ben is a great guy. What my thing with Big Ben is he needs to take a step back. He can't be the guy that's going to win in the game and throw 500 yards and do all that. It's awesome to watch. He's done it before, but he needs to, obviously play. We don't want him just to throw duck eggs to no one. You want him to keep playing the game, but he's got to have a certain role where he's not throwing the interception at a bad time. We settle for 3 points. We've got the defense there. We're using the running game more. And this year, to me, and what the feeling is, I think it's really simple. It's for me, it's how the Steelers win, and also how they like how they tend to lose these games is really getting me in the last 5 years now. We're losing to the Jags when we get to the playoffs by 45 to 30 or whatever it was, at the shootout. We're losing to the Browns. Like, we just don't seem to that. Like, we're not losing in a way where it's like 27-24, great game, awesome game. You give everyone a pat on the back and go, that was an awesome game to watch. Oh, well, we lost. That sucks. We're losing to these teams like the Browns and going, holy moly, how do we lose to the Browns? Like, it just, that to me is what angers me the most about this. And I want to see a big change in offense where Big Ben can start to use the field, but it's not all on Big Ben. It can't be all on him. And I think he loves the spotlight though. Like, what's going to be the connection with Big Ben in Canada, and Canada's got this idea of the set of players, and Big Ben's like, nah, I'm going to change it. Like, there's going to be some ego battles in that locker room from Big Ben and Canada for them not clashing heads, but who's going to have the priority of choosing what plays and how to move the ball forward.
Yeah, and this is it. It's what is going. As we said, expect the unexpected from the Steelers in 2021 and beyond. Look, Snowman throws $5 in the tip jar. Thank you very much, Snowman. It seems to be your weekly contribution, so we're very thankful for it as always. Again, Jeffrey, I think Snowman did this last time you were on the show. He's directly targeted you for questions, maybe misses out on the curtain call or what have you. We might sling it round to the rest of us as well. But will the Steelers give Mike Tomlin a contract extension this year?
It is my opinion. I don't know if it'll be this year. I don't know if he is I don't know if he is where he's signed through, but it is my opinion that Mike Tomlin will be the Steelers head coach until Mike Tomlin doesn't want to be the Steelers head coach.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it, is that he's here and they're keeping him. And frankly, there's no reason to move on from him. There was a piece about Zach Banner written where Zach Banner was talking about how Mike Tomlin was the one who got through to him. That the only reason you're not successful and the only reason you weren't a first-round pick and the only reason you're not starting in this league is your weight issue. Get that under control. And it was Mike Tomlin who got that through to him. And now Zach Banner is a starting level tackle, which to me was amazing to think that the Steelers have gone directly from Alejandro Villanueva, who was a nobody. He was a failed defensive lineman who was too old to learn a new position. And then he's a starter and a Pro Bowler, and Zach Banner is a guy who's just, he's not going to make it in the NFL because he can't control his weight. And now he's going to be our starting tackle. Like, those kind of things kind of show you why people love Mike Tomlin, why players love Mike Tomlin. Yeah, maybe he has some problems in some of the execution and some of the littler areas of the game that, frankly, when you add up their impact to a game, don't matter very much at all. And yet he's a guy who can take someone who Mike Hilton, Vince Williams, Zach Banner, Alejandro Villanueva, they don't really belong on an NFL roster when they come in, and people look at them and cast them off, and the Steelers find them and they become really good players for us.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know that. So Tomlin, I understood to be signed through 2021. I've just done a check there. I think there's a club and coach option there for 2022. So I would suggest when you look at something like that they're working something longer. I completely agree with you, Jeffrey. It's when was the last time the Steelers fired one of their coaches, right? So, I do see this as very much Tomlin's job. I do agree, and it was a bit of talk in the live chat earlier. I think the next 3 years, if things are feeling like they are right now in 3 years and we haven't got that Super Bowl or we haven't come close or it hasn't quite worked, perhaps you start that discussion in that transition service. But it's also, it's that classic one as who have you got to step in there? I mean, we hear from Tomlin all the time, next man up, next man up. Who is the next man up? And who does that look like? Is that person, necessarily even in the NFL right now? What's their position in terms of different coaching staff or what have you? So I think there are a few things to consider there. For me, Tomlin's a really passionate bloke, as we say down under. He's fair dinkum, even despite his media, standard responses that he delivers each week. Mark, would you be happy to have Tomlin for the next decade?
Nah, I disagree. I think we should bring in Rex Ryan. Of course. I love Tomlin, man. That was the only coach I could think of, and I'm like, he's a bit of a goofball, so bring him in.
Well, at least you didn't say Chip Kelly. At least you didn't say Chip Kelly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what was the college boy is going to win by 70 points? Get out of town. No, look, Tomlin's awesome. I think he's done really great for us. And, he's never had a losing season. And if the only thing I'm like that the fans, that some of the fickle fans can be like, we're losing by 10 points in the game in the first quarter. And they're like, fire Tomlin. You're like, no, no. There's who else are you going to, like you said, who else are you going to put there? Who else is going to fill that role? I always go onto the Facebook sites on the Steelers and say Ty Tomlin, and then I get a few likes and responses. But there are a lot of fans out there who don't like him for whatever reason. But I think he's done a great job. He's been there. I've been watching him forever. From Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. I don't know who you would even put there, or who would. We just don't fire our coaches like that. Yes, we haven't got the job done and won the Super Bowl, but neither have a lot of teams. There are still 11, 12 teams that haven't won a Super Bowl, or whatever that stat is, or it could be 7 teams. So, yeah, you're better off with what you know than what you don't know. And we can't be bringing in Rex Ryan or the next big thing from the NCAA basketball team. I don't know. You can't bring anyone else in. Keep Tomlin.
Yeah, I agree. Keep Tomlin. I want to bring up this, and actually James Galway said a comment in the chat on the YouTube side of things saying Steelers play down to less competition, which HH responded with, maybe it's a good thing we have a difficult schedule then. I bring that up because I think that's a really interesting perspective in terms of 2021, and when we say expect the unexpected. Everyone's expecting the Steelers to have this big struggle because we had a struggle last season. That struggle tied with COVID flexes to the schedule, Devin Bush injury, Bud Dupree injury. Every team has form slumps, and they'd got away with it with a few things from previous weeks. It is quite interesting. It is quite interesting to sort of think about if they do play down to lesser competition there. Ben Roethlisberger and this Steelers team and Mike Tomlin and for all the haters out there have a real chance to go out and prove everyone wrong, and equally go play those tough games and prove it. And perhaps if there are a few losses, and we've talked about what does 12-4 achieve, does that steal this team come playoffs times? I just think that's a really interesting thing to think about as we go in. And also now that we've got confirmation on the 17th game with Seattle coming to the Steelers, that's been now confirmed in that 17th game. Whether Russell Wilson's there, who knows? He could be running with no one protecting him. It's an interesting thought there. But how are you both just really quickly feeling about the Steelers playing what is a top strength of schedule in 2021?
I still think the Steelers have a chance. Well, this is my fandom in me, but the Steelers have a chance to win the AFC North. Now, look, I still think we're in that transition year, but maybe this is the year that we go out and we win the North again. The Ravens are a tough team. I don't trust the Browns. I don't trust the Bengals. It's really, again, it's the Ravens and Steelers for me who are going to win the North. So now the Steelers do play hard. For some reason, maybe it's like optical illusion that we look up, but like when we do play tough teams, we play harder. And we go out and play the Raiders down in Oakland. They're 2-10, we lose to them. So, and I don't know if that's Tomlin's fault or how it is, but if we have the tougher schedule, it really doesn't matter. Like these fellas are playing each other tough and hard. So it doesn't overly matter, but I think the Steelers could shock some people because half the media doesn't like us anyway for some reason. So what are your thoughts, Jeff? Have we got this in the bag?
Well, for me, the whole we play down to opponents, that's Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger is a matchup guy. He plays his best against the toughest players, especially when he could still scramble around and break tackles and do that stuff. He was at his best against the toughest defenses. Like 2008, when the Ravens were the second best defense and the Steelers were first, Ben beat them 3 times with no offensive line. Like no run game. He just willed that to happen. He was phenomenal at that, but he also played his worst against the weaker opponents. And if you look back, when the Steelers have a great defense, they didn't lose those games. It was when the Steelers' defense wasn't good enough to carry the team against a bad team. So if the other team could score, Ben Roethlisberger really like sleptwalked through half the game and then would wake up and make it close. But That's how we lost those games most of the time. And I've always said, I'll take that if you've got a quarterback that plays his best against the best teams, because the best teams are in the playoffs. And we've seen him do that. We saw him even in Cleveland. He came back. Even in Jacksonville, when they were stomping us, he came back. Our defense let us down with the injuries. But yeah, the Steelers, for me, I would love this season to mirror. Last season kind of mirrored 2004, where the Steelers went on this huge stretch, won all those games, and went all the way till they faced New England, and New England just embarrassed them. And then 2005, the Steelers struggled, but they pulled it together at the end. And then they were hot at the right time. And that's really the story. Can the Steelers have the injury luck? Can they be the right team at the end of the season? Can they have a little better depth, have some young guys step up and be the team that's healthy and rolling at the end of the season? If they can, they've got a shot. And really, at this point of the season, that's what the Steelers have to work on, is be a team that you have the pieces that if things fall right for you, you have that shot. And I think they'll do it again. I think we were that team last year. It's just we lost so many players. We lost too many key defenders, and it just didn't work.
And that's why we again, like, expect the unexpected. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking 2021 is going to be another flame out, you might just be proven wrong. Now, to wrap it up, James Galway asks PJ Finney Pants bad. We got Jeffrey on the show after Mark asked the question last week around, are they drafting an O-lineman to protect Big Ben, or are they drafting an O-lineman to support Matt Canada's offense? And I wanted this sort of question to close out the show. We've seen a number, and this is why BJ Finney Pants are back. BJ Finney's potentially wearing some pants on the Steelers O-line. We've seen Zach Banner come back this week. They've obviously signed Haig in the last, I don't know if I'm pronouncing, or Hogue there in the last 24 hours as well. As we said, Villanueva's still there, and do they bring him back on the cheap? Obviously you've still got Chooks there. Fellas, do you think that the Steelers, because these top tackles now are looking like they're going to go before the Steelers are picking. Do we still think the Steelers are going to be drafting an O-lineman with the first pick of the 2021 NFL draft? Mark.
Well, I'm kind of veering away now from what I've learned today from Jeffrey here. If we've got all the tackles in place, got some O-line already there, maybe we are in that run to where we can sign a running back, which makes a lot of sense. My idea was just to sign an O-line so we improve, signing O-line guys so we improve the O-line. But if we're already bringing the guys back, give them the 1-year deals, and if Al comes back, is that pretty much half of our O-line set up? And then do we need to get that guy in the first round? Maybe we can go and get a star running back to help this team transition into more of that running game, which we definitely need something like that. So it would be flashy to get a running guy there if it is Najee Harris or another bloke. But yeah, what do you reckon, Jeff? For me,
Canada's offense is not as O-line dependent. And that's if you look, everyone, we talk about the run game. We talked about it earlier. We were 32nd in the league in the run game, but the first through 5 games, we were 9th. We were 9th in the league in yards. We were 9th in the league in yards per carry. We were a top 10 rushing offense through 5 games. And we didn't have that different of an offensive line than what we had when we were 32nd in the league. And that also points out just how bad we were to drop from 9th to 32nd in 11 games. And we did that. The Steelers did that last season. It was that bad. But I don't think Matt Canada's offense needs as many studs on the offensive line as we're used to when we had Todd Haley and we had all those guys. We had that group. We had Munchak. I'm a big fan if they go Michael Beck, my partner on Curtain Call, brought his name up, but Austin Blythe played for the Rams. He is, and no, that's right. He got it from you. Sorry, Matty. He got that name from you. But I looked at some film on him. He is a really good zone run blocking offensive lineman, and that's what you need in Matt Canada's system. If they go and get him, he would be in a very under the radar signing. I could see no offensive lineman being needed to be taken early at all. We'd have our center.
Well, and we'd be good. This is the thing, is when I had a look at him a few weeks back, I was sitting there and I was comparing him with Ted Karras, at guys you get $5 million or below. 28, 40, I think it's 47 starts from 48 games. As you said there, he opens up these run holes. His pass protection wasn't as good this year, but Jared Goff there, and also, they didn't have Todd Gurley and the threat that he was. And I mean, at the end of the day, he's been there for a lot of the good seasons with Todd Gurley. He was opening up holes for Todd Gurley, and we've seen that Gurley struggled, and obviously he's been through injuries and what have you. But Blythe is someone there that I'm shocked that he's still sitting there available. The Rams wanted to bring him back. They couldn't figure out the cap move for this. And that's what I've said a few times, is that they pick before the Steelers. I think they're picking around 50. But they pick before the Steelers in the second round, which means that Creed Humphrey, if you're all up on Creed Humphrey being picked as the Steelers center, you're going to struggle to get that at pick 55. And that's why, hang on, why don't we bring the guy that they actually wanted to keep that's less developmental and bring him in? So, I've joked there about bringing Al on voidable years. If you can get Blythe this year on a 3 or 4 year, maybe 3 with an option, backload it, voidable years as well. You bring him in for like a couple of mil this season. As you say there, Jeffrey, that opens up the in terms of what you can do in the draft. And I just wonder whether there are these, even if Nelson goes, for instance, there are some great cornerbacks in this draft. Do we go RB in the first round and then we go grab one in the second? Or, if one of those cornerbacks, like I don't think Fairley or Saturn the second will fall that far, but you've got guys like Stokes and JC Horn, and I know everyone on the live chat would go nuts if we drafted a cornerback with that first round. But you never know the options. But just to wrap it up, we've got a super chat. It seems to be right when we're about to wrap up the show each week, and we love the super chat, so let them keep coming. But we seem to get a super chat right when we're wrapping up the show. And that's from now, I hope I'm saying this right. Evgeny Crosby. Evgeny Crosby. My apologies. And this is stick insect, I think, in that photo. Love stick insects. They're awesome. Go back and watch the Steelers' first meeting versus the Cleveland Browns last year. Was the fastest defense I've ever seen. Then Devin Bush got hurt, and it was all downhill from there. Guys, we know that Minka started that game with that pick. To me, it's summed up perfectly. But, do you guys expect, Jeffrey, do you expect the Steelers' defense to be this fast this year? And Mark, how happy will you be to see Devin Bush and Fitzpatrick, pair up in the secondary?
I think they're going to have it. I am very interested to see what they do with that second linebacker. I'd love to see Robert Spillane get a chance to be the guy, but I'd also just as much love to see a more athletic guy in there. I think this defense is going to be really good. Even if Sutton is the number 2, they'll find someone in the slot. They still have those safeties. Terrell Edmonds and Minka Fitzpatrick are a great duo. It's Devin Bush is for real. He is legitimately one of the best young linebackers. Still reminds me of a young, very young Ray Lewis before he turned into what Ray Lewis became. There's that defense. They're going to be that good until Tuitt and Hayward can't do it anymore.
That's it. Mark, you excited to have Bush back?
So here's my bold prediction. What's going to happen? Devin Bush is going to, sackle the Browns quarterback Baker again, and as he does a sack, he's going to pick up the fumble. Minka's going to run through that line like a winger in the NRL, and he's going to feed the ball back with a bit of spinach. He's going to catch that, and you're going to have a duo of a sackle, fumble, lateral ball into I don't even know. You're going to catch it, jump over the center, score touchdown. We're winning 8-0. 7-0. And look, they're going to do great. They're going to do fantastic.
Mark, bold prediction. You've got to go bold. They don't just get the 7-0 and kick the point after. They got to go for the 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
Would we call it a try at that point if they're going to start pitching the ball back?
Barry's gonna get the snap back and go for the goal between the two sticks and get 6 points as well. So we're gonna end up getting 12 points from the whole regime of everything. So I hope that made sense. It probably really didn't, but that's what touchdown under is. We're upside down and you're in America. Like, come on.
So Mark has fed off Bad's bold and bizarre predictions. I don't know why we didn't flick Bougie in there, because Bougie's back for another year as well. So Bad's happy about that. But look, everyone, whether you've joined us live on YouTube or Facebook, or you've listened back across the audio side, thanks for joining us on Steelers Touch Down Under this week. I'm Matt Peverell. We've got Mark Davison. We've had Jeffrey Benedict. Have a great weekend.